Oh my God, welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Orly Amor, and this is the Impact on Humanity show. And today we are interviewing my good friend, for I've known him for a while now. His name is Dr. Mort Orman, and he will be talking to us about eliminating anger. Welcome to the show, my friend. I'm so happy to see you. And I'm also glad to introduce you with your bio, so please give me a chance to do that. Dr. Mort Orman is a board-certified internal medicine physician and a 40-year-old anger elimination, stress elimination, and emotions mastery expert. He has written 26 books on how to eliminate anger, stress, and other unwanted emotions without using drugs, relaxation exercises, or other management techniques. He is founder of and director of the Orman Life Mastery Institute, and he has also been the official sponsor of National Stress Awareness Month every April in the US since 1992. Welcome to the show. I am so excited to talk to you today.
Thanks. I'm pleased to be here. And we're still in National Stress Awareness Month for April 2026.
I know, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So, you know what? Let's jump right into it. Why is there so much anger in the world today? It is going nuts everywhere.
Yeah. And, talk about impact on humanity. One of the impacts when I'm gone, one of the impacts I want to have on humanity is to fundamentally change the way people understand their anger and how they deal with it, because there's so many misconceptions about anger in the world today, which is one of the main reasons why people can't control their anger, because they don't really understand where it's coming from. They don't understand what the best strategies are for dealing with it. And we've really done a terrible job of educating the public through the school systems and elsewhere. And that's one of the things I'm trying to correct. I want to see people have a much more accurate, clearer, and more powerful understanding of anger, so that they can, get their hands on the controls instead of being the victims of their anger.
And it seems to be generational, or some people just get angry because it rains. it literally, people have mood swings because it rains, and then it what do you call it? It triggers an effect that is actually snowballs. That's what I was looking for.
But that's part of the misunderstanding. We think one of the biggest misunderstandings we have is this external causation theory. That things outside of us, like the weather, like the behavior of other people, the behavior of the government officials or bureaucracies or, whatever, that those things are what makes us angry. It's like an idea that an external event happens and then we get angry. It looks like direct cause-effect relationship. Well, that's completely false. That's not where anger comes from. It doesn't come from the behavior of other people. It doesn't come from the weather. It doesn't come from anything that happens. It comes from our brain. Our brains manufacture it. And most people have not been taught to understand, A, that that's where it comes from, and B, well, how is it that our brains exactly do it? What's the formula our brains use? And once you understand that formula, even though it's invisible, you can't see it, but once you know, every time you get angry, you know what your brain just did to you and how it got you angry, now you have some ability to step in and do something about it. Until you understand it's not the outside world making you angry, it's your own brain. You're kind of, you're up the creek without a paddle as far as being able to get rid of your anger. All you can do is manage it, which is like the booby prize. It's like, you can manage your anger, but the best thing to do is, well, how about if I just stop being an angry person? Or how about if I just stop getting angry at things that I shouldn't really get angry at? That would be the ideal solution, and it's available. It's just you have to change your understanding of anger to get it.
So give us an example of what does it look like in the silence of our brain. One of the things that you've seen more commonly with humans, obviously with humans, of how we get triggered that way, and it is in our brain. I agree with you on that.
Well, it's interesting. The triggering starts the process, and the anger is the end of the process. And it looks like that's all that's involved. But there's really two steps in the middle that are invisible. There's actually two other triggers. So there's trigger that you see, and then there's two triggers that you don't see, and then it's the anger that you feel. So it's really a 1, 2, 3, 4 process. But everybody's been taught to think of it as just a direct 1, 2 cause effect thing. And those two things are those two things your brain is doing that we can't see is it's giving us three very specific stories or filters or ways of looking at whatever is going on around us or the behavior of other people. Three specific stories. And then the second thing it does is it tells us to believe those stories, that like they're absolutely true and there's nothing left out. And so it's tricking us. Our brain is really tricking us a lot of times and lying to us a lot of times when we get angry, and
Right.
we don't recognize it because it doesn't look like our brain's doing anything. It looks like
Right.
we're just directly experiencing something that's making us angry, like our brain has nothing to do with it. And when in fact it's sitting there in the background, spinning its wheels and telling us these stories to believe, and we believe them, and then when we believe them, we get angry.
Right. So one of my triggers, and I know that it's across the board, we all have this as a trigger. When somebody is unfair to us, or something that was done to us unfairly, or that we presume being unfair, or that we think is not fair to begin with. Yes. I know that triggers me since I'm 10 years old. There's a few things I can remember of things that were done that were unfair, and maybe it was my perception of it, or maybe it was my understanding of it. So
not maybe.
Not it is, right? It is. I get it.
Your brain is telling you how to perceive it.
Right.
And it's what's interesting is, yeah, that's a very common trigger, and most people have that. But it doesn't really matter. There are thousands of different triggers that people can have, some very unique and some very common. It doesn't matter what the trigger is. The brain is always running the same formula, the same three stories, no matter what the trigger is. And again, the problem is it's invisible. We can't see what our brain is doing, so most people don't know that it's happening. But it's not the fact that somebody treated you unfairly, or you see somebody treating somebody else unfairly, which can also make it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's not necessarily what they're doing, although I'm not saying it's good that they're doing that. But when you see that, what makes you angry about it is your brain tells you to look at it in some very specific ways. And for example, take anxiety, for example. It's true for all emotions. Every emotion, our brain creates like three main storylines, and they give us those storylines. So the first storyline our brain gives us when we have anxiety, for example, or fear, is something bad's going to happen. And it tells us that. And if we believe that, which mostly we do, then we're going to start feeling a little bit anxious, okay? Right. But we all know that story is false like 80% of the time. You know, when we think something bad's going to happen, it usually doesn't happen.
Right.
But our brain predicted it was going to happen, and it was wrong. Right. So essentially, it lied to us. It said something bad is definitely going to happen to you, and then we get all nervous about it. Okay, but then when it doesn't happen, we go, oh, good, I'm glad it didn't happen. But you don't realize that. Wait a second, I bought this story from my brain, and it tricked me into believing that what it's telling me was true, and it made me feel a certain way, which was the anxiety. Well, anger is the same way, and guilt is the same way, and sadness is the same way. Our brain is giving us these stories to look at our life situation through, okay? And it's those stories that we believe that's actually creating the emotion.
Well, so are there different stories for everyone? Or because I was taught to think worst case scenario because it's not going to happen. Think it because it's not going to happen. Worry about it, but it's not going to happen. So
that's good strategy for preparing yourself and taking care of yourself.
I don't know about that. I don't think it's a good strategy. I don't want to think about worst case scenario. Why can't I just live happy?
But the point is, it's the same three. It's three stories all the time. Same three stories over and over and over again. The situations change. The triggers change. But if a trigger makes you angry, your brain told you the same three stories.
Which are?
When I work with people, when I coach people, I show them how they can write those three stories down on an index card or a sticky note or on their cell phone. And from that moment on, every time they get angry, they'll know exactly the three stories their brain told them to make them angry. Mm-hmm. And it's no longer a mystery. It's no longer invisible anymore. You have a way to make it visible. And then you see exactly how your brain is telling you to look at the situation. And then you can ask yourself, is story A true? Is story B true? Is story C true? Mm-hmm. Just like you can ask yourself, is it really true something bad's going to happen to me? Well, Yeah, theoretically it could, but what are the odds? The odds are actually pretty low, but my brain's telling me they're very high.
Right.
And then so you can do that kind of quick investigation
Right.
into what your brain's telling you, and you can figure out, wait a second, that's not
Yeah.
real. That's not likely, and
And
so okay, I can
nobody has
relax.
that crystal ball.
Yeah, yeah. But you
Nobody has the
can't
crystal ball.
but you can't do that analysis unless you know what your brain is doing to you and what
Right.
stories your brain is telling you. And
Mm.
that's the breakthrough that we need that's what we need to teach people in schools from the time they're in elementary school or
I agree.
middle school. You definitely shouldn't graduate high school without knowing, how your brain makes you angry or how your brain makes you anxious or how your brain makes you sad or things that we all have to deal with as we go through
Right.
life, emotions that are very powerful. So and that's the kind of impact on humanity that we need to start
Yeah,
having.
we absolutely need it.
You
So,
know,
is
you,
there anything we can do to lower the amount of unnecessary anger in the world? What is it that we can do right now?
we can learn to understand the formula that the brain uses, and then we can go to work every time we feel angry, questioning our brains, which is not something people normally do. We do the opposite. If our brain tells us something, we tend to believe it, and if we feel it, that tends to put a stamp of truth to it. That if it's a feeling, then it must be true. Well, our feelings are coming from the stories our brains are telling us. And a lot of times those stories leave out a lot of stuff, or they misrepresent things or distort things or flat out lie, or tell us the opposite is true of what's true. And that'll get you a strong emotion if you start believing that kind of stuff. So the first thing we got to do is shift from blaming the outside world and acknowledge that those things are triggers. They're real, and they do trigger our emotions. But the real action, the real way the emotion's getting created is in our own brains in response to that. And that you can actually learn how to diagnose what's going on. So I'm a medical doctor. I spent the last 50 years learning how to diagnose, the causes of illnesses, but people can't see
Right.
you know, and we use X-rays and MRIs and CAT scans and blood tests and physical exams and history taking, all those things so that we can understand what's going on inside the body that you can't normally see and don't understand. Well, you can do the same thing with diagnosing how your brain is creating your various emotions, which are not diseases, but the brain is making them, and it's doing it through a process that's repeatable over and over again. And it's invisible, but you can learn to understand what it is. And that's the single most important thing I think people can do is make that shift from external to internal. Don't blame yourself for it being internal, but just realize that's where it's actually coming from.
Yeah.
And how is it happening? That's what you really want to learn how to understand. That's what I teach people how to do. That's what I want to get into educational systems,
Yeah.
homeschooling, maybe the first area that would be receptive to some new curriculum, that's
For sure.
not the traditional way of teaching things, but that actually give people power over their emotions. Wouldn't that be fantastic if people had power over their anger, if they had power over their sadness, over other emotions that take them over and cause them to do all kinds of crazy things that are often damaging to themselves or to
Yeah.
other people or their relationships? It's
Yeah.
really important.
It would be also very good if people knew how to discern between the lies and the truth. And
Yes.
unfortunately, that's still a problem. So
And
let
that
me
is that is that is another reason why we have so much anger today is because we're
Yeah.
losing that ability
Yeah.
to discern what's true from what's not true, particularly when it's coming from our own brain.
Right.
What's true, which is hard, because we're just used to believing everything our brain tells us that must be true.
Yes.
But
And
if you tell the truth about that, how
yes.
many times have we discovered, and everybody's discovered this, how many times have we discovered that what our brain told us was true didn't turn out to be true? You know?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And it's a sad day when we do discover that it was not the truth. When
Yes.
we discover it was a lie, we really feel horrible. But don't feel horrible. That's what I'm hearing from you is do not feel
No,
guilty or don't blame or shame yourself.
no, it's
Just
just
know that you just got the answer of truth or lie, which is a good thing too.
yeah. And you
But
didn't have a chance. You really didn't have a chance to do anything about it when you couldn't see what was going on.
right, you don't know
It's
what
not
you
your
don't know.
it's not your fault that you don't know this. Nobody's
Yeah.
teaching it to you, and you
Right.
can't figure it out on your own most of the time
Yeah.
because you can't see what your brain is doing. And
Right.
it, but it is learnable. It is easy to learn. It's easy to teach and easy to learn. The hard part is, then okay, now you got to do the hard work of telling the truth. You got
Right.
to argue with your brain a little bit, and we're not
Definitely.
good at
Uh-huh.
telling the truth in general or arguing with our own brain in particular.
I hope so. All right. So,
Yeah.
my last question for you is how does anger impact the lives of married people and people who have been divorced? I know there's many triggers in couples, and
Ah,
they,
yeah.
they bring the old relationships into the new relationships. That's one of the triggers. Then there is the fault blaming themselves for being unworthy or ungood, and so many things that can go into that conversation. So
Yeah.
in a few minutes, yeah, please explain to us
Well,
how does that
and
impact?
anger is very destructive in relationships. We all know that. We've all seen it. It's happened to
Sure.
us. We've been involved in relationships where anger has killed the relationship over time.
Absolutely.
And oftentimes, and it can happen with our kids. It can happen with at work. It can happen in marriage, or if you get divorced. Often anger was part of the process that led to that. But also, the divorce stirs up a whole lot of anger, and then people after the divorce are left with stuck with a lot of anger about the first marriage or the previous marriage, and then they go recreate that the next marriage that they get into, and it ends up the same way. So I'm interested in saving as many first marriages as possible by helping people understand their emotions better and their particularly anger. And if I can't get there in time to do that, to help people, not have a second divorce or a subsequent divorce if they've had one or more before. And just if you just look at my own life, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I had a lot of anger. Every one of my relationships with women failed, primarily at a large degree because of the anger. And then I figured this stuff out 40 years ago. I figured out how my brain was making me angry. And since that time, I've had very little anger in my life. And my wife and I are about to celebrate our 42nd wedding anniversary. So I can tell you that would not have happened had I not understood everything we're talking about today, which is I understood how my brain was making me angry. I knew the formula. I could question every time I start to get angry. Wait a minute, is this based in truth or is this based in some kind of cockamamie thing my brain is sending me that I should just ignore? And a lot of times that was the case. But you need that foundational understanding shift before you can make those kind of life altering changes happen.
That's awesome. So, I know you have a program. I'm super excited that you can share about it. And if you can share about, what would be the process to get in touch with you, get on your calendar. We're going to put all those notes into the podcast so people can reach out to you. But talk to us about your process a little bit so that we know where to go.
Yeah, I've been able to create a very short-term one-on-one coaching program. We're in just 8 1-hour sessions like this over Zoom.
Awesome.
I can teach people the formula, and it takes usually the first 2 sessions. And then we have 6 sessions where we work with it. So they share examples of where they got angry or something happened yesterday or something happened 10 years ago, and they're still angry about it. And we use the formula, and I show them how to tell the truth about what happened so they can sort out what's true from what's not true. So they get a lot of practice doing that. So by the end of the full 8 sessions, not only do they have the formula and the methodology, but they have a lot of practice in using it and seeing their anger just disappear right in front of their eyes. And then they have that whole thing to use for the rest of their life,
Yeah.
once the thing's over. So the best way for them to find out about that is I have a free PDF file that they can download, and all they have to do
Okay.
is go to relationshipangercure.com,
Ooh.
and they can get
Relationshipangercure.com.
angercure.com, and
Love
they
it.
can download that, and that'll tell them how they can schedule a call with me if they want. I'd be happy to talk to them, a complimentary 30-minute call if they
That's
discuss
awesome.
their situation, if they want to know whether, what's going on with their anger situations and whether this can help them or not. So happy to do that for them.
Yay. Okay. So just as we wrap up right now, I have a few quirky questions for you so people get to know you a little bit better and that
Okay.
you are a fun-loving guy, right? Because that's what makes us know, like, and trust. So what's your favorite day of the week
Favorite day of the week.
and why?
Sunday, I get to play golf.
Ooh, okay. Makes sense. Okay. On the deck of cards, what's your favorite suit or card with
Oh,
that?
well, obviously the ace.
The ace of what?
Ace of any of the aces is fine with
Oh,
me.
okay. It has to be an ace. Okay, like a hole in one. Got it. Any favorite quote and by
Yeah.
whom?
Yes. My favorite quote that I live by and that we're actually talking about today is the map is not the territory.
Oh, by whom?
I forget who said it,
Okay,
but
we're gonna say it's unknown, but the map is not the territory.
yeah,
That's
I
pretty
think it came from a military leader,
okay.
because the whole concept is, we create these mental maps or these ideas of what we think is true, or what we think the territory is, and then when we get out in the real world, like if you're in a battle, it's very different. It changes. It's
That's
not
true.
quite what you thought it was, and you've got to be responsive to the reality
Yeah.
versus the idea of the reality that you had in your head when you started. Yeah,
I love that. That is awesome.
yeah.
And any last words of inspiration to those listening, things that they can just right now think about or go do?
Yeah, just to realize anger management is not the best way to deal with anger. The way I think of anger management now is anger management is like putting a leash on a wild animal. You're still stuck with the wild animal. Anger elimination is where you understand how the animal got into your life in the first place, so that you can kick it out of your life and get rid of it for good. And there's nothing you have to worry about managing anymore. So people need to understand that if they have anger problems that are causing problems in their life or on their job or in their relationships or with their health, which I saw as a doctor a lot, you're not stuck with it. It's not a matter, it's not something you're born with. It's not something you're stuck with, like part of your permanent personality, like you're always going to be that way, which is what I thought when I was in my 20s and 30s, by the way. But I was wrong.
Yeah.
But
There you go.
you can get rid of that anger if you just have the right approach and the right understanding, and it's not actually that hard to do.
Thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm so glad that we had this conversation. You heard it here, folks. There is anger elimination, not anger management. I'm super excited to have you on the show. Thank you again for your time and generosity. Remember, everyone, this is the Impact on Humanity show podcast with Orly Amor. And remember, impact on humanity is our duty. And I'll see you guys next time.